Maureen McCormick struggled to cope with life after Awadas. The Brady Bunch grew more intense as the years wore on, and the line between Marcia Brady and Maureen herself became increasingly blurred in the public eye. Audiences and producers alike expected her to embody the same sunshine and perfection they had seen on their television screens. Every audition, every public appearance seemed to carry the unspoken demand that she remain the flawless, chipper teenager, forever frozen in time. As she matured, Maureen found that reality could not accommodate the fantasy people clung to. Pressure was suffocating, and without proper support or guidance, she began to crumble under the weight of expectations she could never truly meet. Her sense of self-worth, already fragile from years of striving to please both the public and her family, eroded further with every professional rejection and personal disappointment. Maureen's home life, instead of being a sanctuary, often compounded her difficulties. Her mother's long battle with depression created an environment of emotional instability, while her father's temper added an undercurrent of fear and unpredictability to her upbringing. These childhood wounds left Maureen desperately yearning for validation and unconditional love, needs that fame, with its shallow adulation and fleeting nature, could never satisfy. Without a steady hand to guide her through the treacherous waters of young adulthood in Hollywood, she was left vulnerable to the industry's darker temptations. Parties, drugs, and the seductive promise of belonging offered an alluring escape from the gnawing emptiness she often felt. Cocaine quickly became Maureen's drug of choice, initially masking her insecurities and allowing her to project an illusion of confidence and invincibility. The high dulled her anxieties and offered fleeting moments of euphoria, but it also trapped her in a vicious cycle of dependency and self-destruction. Her world grew increasingly chaotic as her addiction deepened. Missed auditions, erratic behavior, and broken relationships followed in its wake, isolating her further from the dreams she once cherished. Quaaludes introduced during this descent compounded her struggles, leaving her in a haze that made even the simplest daily tasks feel insurmountable. The vibrant, ambitious girl who once lit up millions of living rooms began to fade into a shadow of her former self. She sabotaged opportunities that could have revived her career and alienated friends and colleagues who cared about her well-being. At her lowest, Maureen would later recall, she felt as though she had utterly lost her way, wandering through a life that no longer resembled the one she had imagined for herself as a hopeful young actress. Behind the public smiles and occasional guest appearances, she was battling an overwhelming sense of failure, guilt, and self-loathing that no amount of fame or recognition could ever heal. Maureen McCormick's descent during the early 1980s became a tragic spiral that seemed, at times, almost irreversible. Her drug use had become so habitual and all-consuming that it overshadowed nearly every aspect of her life. Professional opportunities that could have cemented her transition from child star to respected adult actress fell apart one after another. Missing auditions and failing to follow through on commitments became common occurrences. She would sometimes show up for important meetings visibly high, slurring her words, her once polished appearance disheveled. Casting directors who had once been eager to work with the iconic Marcia Brady quickly learned they could not rely on her, and Hollywood, famously unforgiving, began to turn its back on her. The most painful near miss came with Raiders of the Lost Ark, a project that would have launched any actress into a new stratosphere of fame. Maureen's agents managed to secure her an audition, and for a brief moment, it seemed she might finally escape the long shadow of Marcia Brady. But her addiction was too powerful. She missed crucial meetings, failed to follow through on callbacks, and ultimately proved too risky a bet for such a high-profile production. When she later spoke about losing that opportunity, the regret was palpable. She understood that it had been a defining crossroads, and she had taken the wrong path. It was a pattern that repeated itself with painful consistency throughout that period of her life, as hope after hope slipped beyond her grasp. Her personal relationships deteriorated alongside her career. Friends who had once celebrated her success and beauty began to drift away, exhausted by the chaos that surrounded her. Trust was eroded with every broken promise and betrayal fueled by addiction. Her behavior became unpredictable, marked by bursts of anger, desperation, and profound sadness. Even her family, who loved her deeply, struggled to maintain a connection. There were interventions, pleas for her to seek help, but Maureen, trapped in the delusions that drugs often foster, could not yet see the full extent of her decline. At her lowest point, Maureen found herself engaging in dangerous, humiliating behaviors in pursuit of her next high. Trading sex for drugs, a grim reality she would later confront with painful honesty, was perhaps the clearest sign of how far she had fallen from the girl America once adored. It was a secret that ate away at her, intensifying her shame and further isolating her from those who might have helped her. The contrast between the smiling, radiant image of Marcia Brady and the shattered, desperate reality of Maureen McCormick was devastating. She was a living example of how fame, when not properly supported by inner strength and external guidance, can destroy as easily as it elevates. Behind the bright lights and polished veneer of Hollywood, Maureen battled demons few could imagine, her private hell hidden in plain sight. During the darkest years of her addiction, Maureen McCormick's life teetered constantly on the edge of disaster. Nights blurred into mornings and mornings into hazy afternoons, with no real sense of time or place. It became frighteningly normal for her to wake up in unfamiliar surroundings, sometimes with strangers whose faces she could not recall. The circumstances of how she had ended up there lost entirely to the haze of drugs and alcohol. Each morning, after one of these episodes, brought fresh waves of terror and shame, but also a numb resignation. Maureen had come to believe she deserved whatever misery her life inflicted on her. Self-hatred gnawed at her relentlessly, convincing her that she was beyond redemption, that the America's sweetheart image she had once represented had been a lie all along. In interviews years later, Maureen would bravely admit that she had made multiple suicide attempts during this time, desperate to silence the pain that no drug could ever truly dull. Each brush with death left her more hollow and broken than before, yet there remained, buried deep inside, a small, stubborn flicker of hope that she could find her way back to herself. In brief moments of lucidity, when the fog of addiction would temporarily lift, Maureen saw the devastation her life had become and would make a determined effort to change. She enrolled in various rehabilitation programs, hoping each time that it would finally stick. But recovery was never linear. For her, the emotional wounds she carried, scars from childhood, from fame, from her own perceived failures, were deep and complex, and the process of healing was far more daunting than she had anticipated. She would make progress, only to relapse after, encountering a trigger or succumbing to the crushing fear that she would never truly be free from her past. Amidst this relentless cycle of hope and despair, a true turning point arrived in 1985 when she met Michael Cummings. Unlike many of the figures who had passed through her life during her years of addiction, those who either enabled her habits or abandoned her, Michael represented something entirely different: stability, kindness, and genuine care. Their bond, formed not over the chaotic highs and lows of a shared drug culture, but through honest conversations and a shared desire for something better. Michael quickly became a grounding force in Maureen's life, offering not judgment but steady, unwavering support. His belief in her worth, even when she could not see it herself, planted the seeds of real change. Their marriage later that year was more than a romantic union. It was a lifeline for Maureen. But recovery was still not immediate or easy. Even with Michael by her side, Maureen faced continued battles against the pull of old habits, the haunting memories of her past mistakes, and the ever-present threat of relapse. Yet, unlike before, she no longer fought alone. Michael's presence gave her the strength to keep trying, even when she stumbled, and his faith in her helped rebuild the self-worth that addiction had nearly destroyed. Together, they navigated the treacherous path toward healing, step by painful step, forging a partnership that would endure the storms and ultimately guide Maureen back toward the light. Motherhood became the catalyst that Maureen McCormick had long needed to push her toward lasting transformation. When her daughter Natalie was born, the stakes of her battle with addiction changed dramatically. It was no longer just her own life that hung in the balance. She now had a small, innocent life depending on her. Natalie's presence forced Maureen to confront truths she could no longer avoid. She saw clearly that if she continued down the destructive path she had been on for so many years, she would pass on the same instability and heartbreak that had so deeply wounded her own childhood. Determined to be the kind of mother she had always longed for, a source of unconditional love, safety, and guidance, Maureen found a new, profound motivation to stay sober. Yet even with this powerful incentive, sobriety was not a smooth or easy journey. Facing sobriety meant peeling away the layers of protection that addiction had provided for so long. The traumas she had numbed with drugs and alcohol came roaring, back with painful clarity. Old insecurities, grief, and self-loathing had to be addressed head-on. Therapy sessions were grueling, often leaving Maureen emotionally exhausted, but each one carved a new path toward healing. She wrestled with the guilt of the years lost to addiction, the opportunities squandered, and the relationships damaged beyond repair. She also confronted her struggles with bulimia, an eating disorder that had taken root during her years under Hollywood's harsh scrutiny. Recovery demanded that she extend herself a kind of forgiveness she had always withheld, to recognize that surviving the storm was, in itself, a testament to her strength. When Maureen published her memoir, Here's the Story, Surviving Marcia Brady and Finding My True Voice, in 2008, it was a culmination of decades of private battles fought in silence. In the book, she stripped away the carefully constructed image that had defined her public persona for so long. With searing honesty, she recounted not just the highlights of her life, but also the most painful lows: her addiction, her suicide attempts, her struggles with mental illness. In doing so, Maureen liberated herself from the impossible standards that had been placed on her as Marcia Brady. She owned her truth without apology, and in doing so, she gave countless readers permission to own theirs as well. The response to her memoir was overwhelmingly positive. Many saw in Maureen's story a reflection of their own struggles with addiction, depression, or the crushing pressure of living up to other people's expectations. In the years that followed, Maureen experienced an unexpected yet deeply gratifying resurgence in her career. She appeared on reality shows such as Celebrity Fit Club and Dancing with the Stars, each time showing a new side of herself, someone who had endured, stumbled, and survived. The world was no longer seeing the picture-perfect Marcia Brady. They were seeing Maureen McCormick as she truly was, resilient, complex, and profoundly human. For the first time in decades, Maureen was no longer living in the shadow of her past. She was standing fully in her truth, proud of the journey that had brought her there. Though Maureen McCormick has built a life grounded in recovery and self-acceptance, the scars from her tumultuous past remain deeply etched into her soul. She has spoken candidly about how the struggles she faced in her youth never truly vanish. They simply evolve into quieter, more manageable battles. Every day requires a conscious decision to stay sober, to resist the pull of old habits that once offered temporary relief at a devastating cost. The temptation to seek escape through self-destructive means still lingers on the edges of her life, but Maureen has developed the resilience and self-awareness needed to confront these urges head-on. Therapy has become a lifelong commitment, providing her a safe space to unpack lingering traumas and fears. Her marriage to Michael Cummings remains a vital anchor, a reminder that steadfast love and unwavering support can weather even the fiercest storms. Additionally, Maureen's faith plays a crucial role, offering her a spiritual foundation that reinforces hope, forgiveness, and a sense of purpose greater than herself. In reflecting on her life, Maureen often speaks about the intricate duality she has lived with, the eternal tug-of-war between Marcia Brady and Maureen McCormick. She acknowledges that while the role of Marcia catapulted her into fame and opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed, it also created an impossibly high standard that she felt she could never live up to. The pressure to embody a flawless, ever-cheerful ideal was suffocating, trapping her in a cycle of self-loathing every time she fell short. It took decades of personal growth for Maureen to release herself from the need to meet that fictional standard. Letting go of Marcia, or at least redefining what Marcia meant in her life, became essential to her healing. Today, Maureen measures her success not by public accolades or Hollywood validation, but by more meaningful markers: the depth of her relationships, the strength of her mental and emotional health, and the quiet but powerful sense of peace she has fought so hard to attain. Now Maureen McCormick stands as a powerful symbol of resilience and survival. Her life's journey is not simply a cautionary tale of fame's dark side, it is a profound testament to the possibility of redemption. She is living proof that even after the deepest falls, recovery and transformation are possible. She is no longer the fallen Brady caricature that tabloids once painted. She is a woman who faced unimaginable personal demons, surrendered to the difficult process of healing, and emerged stronger, wiser, and far more compassionate. The journey Maureen McCormick undertook is a rare and powerful testament to the indomitable human spirit. At her lowest, it would have been easy, and perhaps even understandable, for her to surrender completely to despair. Yet even in her darkest hours, something within Maureen refused to be extinguished. That quiet, stubborn flicker of hope eventually grew into a roaring determination to reclaim her life. Her story reminds us that no matter how deep the scars, or how far one has fallen, redemption is always within reach. She shattered the illusion that those who stumble are forever broken, showing instead that healing is a messy, painful, but ultimately achievable process. Maureen's refusal to be defined by her past mistakes, by the labels society attached to her, is itself an act of profound courage. Through her battles with addiction, depression, and the heavy burden of public expectation, Maureen learned that true growth begins only when one is willing to face the ugliest parts of oneself without flinching. She discovered that perfection is an impossible and destructive goal, and that real strength is built through vulnerability, forgiveness, and relentless perseverance. In stepping out from behind the carefully constructed mask of Marcia Brady, Maureen allowed herself and others to see the real person beneath. In doing so, she gave voice to countless individuals who have silently struggled under the weight of impossible standards, reminding them that they too are worthy of love, happiness, and redemption. Her openness about her struggles, especially through her memoir and candid interviews, serves as a beacon to others lost in their own battles. Maureen's life illustrates that healing does not come from pretending the pain never existed. It comes from confronting it with brutal honesty and choosing to move forward anyway. She has embraced her flaws, her past mistakes, and her lingering struggles not as sources of shame, but as essential pieces of the woman she has become. This self-acceptance radiates from her in ways no scripted television role ever could. It is authentic, earned, and deeply inspiring. Maureen McCormick's life story resists easy categorization because it mirrors the complexity of real human experience. It is neither a sanitized fairy tale with a neat, happy ending, nor a simple arc of success and redemption. Instead, it is a tapestry woven from threads of pain, struggle, resilience, and hard-won wisdom. Her journey is messy and imperfect, yet profoundly inspiring because of its raw honesty. Maureen's life underscores that true growth does not occur in the absence of hardship, but through it. Every setback, every broken promise to herself, every relapse and heartbreak became a lesson that slowly guided her toward a deeper understanding of who she really was beneath the glittering image projected by fame. Choosing to live authentically rather than chasing the unattainable illusion of perfection required unimaginable bravery. For Maureen, it meant shedding the expectations placed upon her from childhood. The expectation to always smile, to always succeed, to always be the flawless Marcia Brady the world adored. It meant confronting not only the damage inflicted by others, but also the damage she had done to herself. She had to wrestle with guilt, shame, and regret, emotions that could easily have swallowed her whole. But rather than allowing those emotions to define her, Maureen used them as stepping stones, building a new foundation grounded in self-acceptance and truth. By sharing her vulnerabilities openly, Maureen redefined what it means to be strong. Strength, she showed, is not about never falling. It's about having the courage to get back up after each fall, a little wiser and a little more compassionate toward oneself. Her story is a reminder that healing is not a straight path. It is full of twists, turns, setbacks, and victories, both large and small. Even now, years after finding sobriety and peace, Maureen acknowledges that the work of self-care and emotional growth never truly ends. It is a lifelong journey, one that demands continual effort, but offers profound rewards. In presenting her real self to the world, flawed, battle-scarred, but deeply human, Maureen McCormick has given others permission to do the same. She has shown that it is not only possible to rise from the wreckage of addiction, failed dreams, and broken identities, but that doing so can lead to a richer, more meaningful existence than any illusion of perfection ever could. Her story stands as a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever felt lost, reminding us all that no matter how battered or broken we may feel, healing, growth, and even joy are always within reach if we have the courage to keep moving forward.